In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is the midnight hour. It is time for Ghost to Ghost. Tonight's episode, the Hat Man, also sometimes referred to as the Tall Man or the Top Hat Man. Tonight's co-hosts are Jennifer Verne, research manager and podcast producer.
Good evening.
And Heather Lawson, case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
Okay, and this is an episode I wrote, and there's a lot of attachment to this episode. I want to explain a little bit. We had a couple that was in spirit many years ago, and the wife while growing up, had seen this entity.
Really?
Oh, yes. And we tried to get her to contact her. We wanted to do a video because we wanted to put it into like orientation for new members, and we wanted to have it for different things and of her experience. But it was quite a frightening, certainly traumatic, emotionally traumatic episode. And we're not going to release their names because I didn't get permission to do so. But I mean, honestly, this is a phenomena that bridges all cultures, and the odd thing is that it looks the same to everyone that sees it, or relatively the same,
right?
Yeah, not exact, but relatively. And there's also some confusion. A lot of people confuse Slender Man with Tall Man or Tap Man, and that's two different entities. And we'll do a podcast on Slender Man, but to describe what this entity looks like. He's silhouetted just unmistakable. He is over 7 foot tall. Sometimes he wears a cape or like an Inverness cape. And for those who don't know what Inverness cape is, if you ever watch Sherlock Holmes, his top coat had like a cape on the top. It's a Scottish thing and normally worn with a kilt, but it's called Inverness cape, and it was very popular in the 20s and 30s. Or top coat or trench coat.
So it's that one, the cape, and then there's like a little tiny cape on top of the cape?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Like a double cape.
Yeah, I have one, and I got one, and I tell you what, it weighs a lot. I didn't know it when I ordered it. I ordered it a little large, so I had a little room. Mm-hmm. It's all wool, and oh my God, geez. It weighs.
So it's not, because when you first said a cape with a hoodie type thing, I was picturing Dracula cape, but it's not that.
Oh, no.
It's one of those that's the double caped.
Double caped, yes. Okay. It's like a cape version of the trench coat below that cape, but the initial cape comes down to just before your elbows, and it goes around, and these were
kind of like Sherlock Holmes.
That's exactly what he wore. The character Sherlock Holmes had some sort of Scottish attachment, I think, at some point, and that's where they developed that. The deer hunter cap that he wore was normally a British Scottish thing. A lot of the royalty wore that when they were hunting, and he made that very famous. It was not meant necessarily to be an icon when Conan Doyle wrote it, but it worked that way, and everybody thinks of it. So, but anyway, this guy is he's huge. He's got really all these features, other than like a shadow figure's outline features, is his eyes. His eyes.
He's all black.
He's all black,
like a shadow.
Yep.
Like shadow people.
And I think when he moves, that's when you get the impression of the Inverness cape or overcoat. And just like any other shadow figure, only very large, very intimidating. The feel people get is different with him.
Okay.
When they see him compared to a shadow figure, it's a very ominous feeling. And he doesn't wear a top hat. I've seen him been pictured several times in certain graphics where he's wearing a top hat.
Right.
He never wore a top hat. He wears a very unusual hat. He's either seen in something that looks sort of like a bolero, and a bolero is the easiest way to explain this without dating myself and talking about Gunsmoke or any of the old westerns. This is a cowboy hat that's flat and round on the top and has a little bit of an indentured brim. And they wore, I tell you, the easiest way, I always tell people, if you watch the movie Van Helsing with the Wolverine in it,
Hugh
Jackman. Yeah, if you watch that, that's the cap.
Okay.
That is a bolero type hat.
Okay.
Or they think it looks more like a fedora, a white brim fedora. And this is what he wears. He doesn't wear a top hat. And many feel that, boleros were popular amongst undertakers in the English. That was what they were considered an undertaker cap. And that's what to this day, undertakers now, they wear a top hat that has ribbon off of it. But back then, they wore a shorter version of this, which was a bolero, and that's what they wore.
Okay.
Also, there's a lot of people that go back to Poltergeist too, the movie, that it looks like a reverend's hat, like an old Quaker sort of reverend hat.
Oh, now that I can picture.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, so anyway, that's where, some of this is brought in. And the funny thing is, no matter how you look at it, it's a very odd situation. And I say odd twice because, man, ghosts, they generally appear, and you can trace most of the time who they are and whether they're there, or at least have some sort of working theory. The problem is with this particular character, there's no good way to get theories. For a while, everyone thought that he picked on children. Well, that was because of the mix-up with Slender Man. He's went after and appeared to adults more times than he has children, actually.
Okay. And you may talk about this later, but I wonder if maybe, just like in UFO sightings where you've been visited your whole life.
Yes.
Has this top hat man been visiting this adult their whole life?
Well, that's an interesting theory, and I think some people are tossing it around. I don't know if they're coming straight out direct with it, but I mean it's true. I mean, just like the people that have been abducted and studied by aliens, they believe that they've had so many incidents starting at like age 12 all the way through.
Right.
The funny thing is, some of these people may have and didn't realize it, or maybe they psychologically blocked it out. I mean, it's a possibility. The thing is, there's no rhyme or reason to why he appears to the people he does. He appears sometimes during the day, believe it or not. There's been several accounts I've read where he appeared during the daytime.
Okay.
To adults. He can speak to people by telepathy. He doesn't move his mouth, or at least he doesn't seem to have a mouth.
Right, because we can't see features, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and he tends to put thoughts and conversations in their head. But the big thing is, again, like I said earlier, he crosses all the cultures. It's seen by many different people around the world, and everyone describes him basically the same way. Now, when he appears, sometimes as an omen, but sometimes it isn't. And we're going to talk about that as we go. I kind of think of him like Mothman, the Mothman legacy, where every time he appeared, something happened. But they can't find, when they talk to people that have had instances of being visited by Hat Man, there's really nothing that happens after that they can correlate. It's not an omen before death. It doesn't seem to be. And this has been brought up. They've talked about so many things that he appears to be. But, one thing he tends to give everybody is the constant fear of being watched.
Well, yeah.
And, what do we talk about with aliens? I mean, we don't do ufology, but I mean,
right.
Aliens, they claim they're being watched and monitored.
I was just going to say, haven't some people tried to corroborate him with extraterrestrials, because he does seem to appear with other forms of shadow people, right?
And sometimes he comes with extra ones, and they're trying to lock him in with what's called the Smiling Man. The Smiling Man is another one that the ufology
Howard
committee...
Keel, not Howard Keel. Howard Keel's a singer.
Well, that's one I didn't know, so I'll give you that one.
Howard Keel from Showboat and Seven Brides and Seven Brothers.
Okay.
That's Howard Keel.
Oh, okay. A lot of times I know them by face or song, but I don't know them by name.
Yeah.
Well, it's a funny thing because several things, yes, he always appears sometimes either by himself, sometimes with other figures, and they're always shadow figures. Now, those figures are very indescript, except there's been some people that said, they had this big white smile, and I don't know, that's been something of late. It's come out rather new with him. But, the other thing he seems to do, he does hyper jumping is what they call it.
Hyper jumping? What's that?
Yeah, and I've never heard that phrase until I started reading some of these different accounts. And what it is if you wake up in the middle of the night, and a lot of times when he appears, he gives an attention getter. He'll bang something or drop something, and when you wake up,
great.
Yeah, when you see him, one of the things that happens is usually you become paralyzed, and it's a form of sleep paralysis.
Okay,
and if you're not paralyzed and you look away, and this goes back, the thing I thought of was Doctor Who and the Weeping Angels. You look away and you look back and they're closer, and it's the same kind of effect.
Okay.
Yeah, so what happens is when you look away and look back, suddenly he's a lot closer to you. He may have been across the room at once, and now he's at the foot of your bed, and you look away again, and he's right there in your face. And so he tends to hyper jump. The other entities, if they accompany him, really don't do much but stand around and watch. So, it certainly has awoken the ufology community because they believe that, this is some sort of form taken by UFO entities, and I'm thinking, okay, I get that.
I've heard that before, yeah.
But, if I was an alien and I wanted to take a different form, you'd do that to relax the person. This isn't the one I would start with.
No, because that's when you go with John Keel.
Yeah.
That's his name. John Keel and the Smiling Man.
Yeah.
Ingrid Cole.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you get a nice, pleasing, recognizable form to interact. You're not going to see some spooky, creepy shadow.
It's like having a bunch of circus clowns show up in your bedroom.
No, yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm
they're
with
studying fear effects.
Yeah, what was the movie I liked? Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I always thought
Heather, now that's an idea. Okay, but
that?
we're not a UFO podcast, though.
No, but yeah. Like I said, the creepiest thing, a lot of people always, what's the creepiest thing? I think, even though it was hilarious, was Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Critters.
Critters, yeah. I always like to tease the clowns from your shrine over that.
One?
I don't watch horror movies.
Oh.
I've never seen Critters. So
I actually don't.
No, I'm like Jennifer. Most of them are boring. Now, I do watch classics. I've tried to introduce the children because and I'm going to piss off a lot of people. I don't like Freddy Krueger and chop 'em up movies. They're not very interesting. They have no plot.
Yeah.
Oh, they might have some special effects, but big deal. I'm not that interested. Now, you take something like Silver Bullet that was written by Stephen King. That's a really good movie. I think we own 3 versions of The Thing, and if you've never watched the original black and white of The Thing, it's worth watching. It's comical. Shut the damn door. Yeah, it's one section's worth it all. But, whatever, I look at that, those kind of horror movies I'll watch. But people always ask me, did you see Paranormal Activity? No, I tried to watch the first one, and I kept going, turn off the TV. It's just stupid.
Now I had the opposite effect.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, that one I did not like. Now, the gory stuff, I don't go in for that.
Yeah.
It's just
dumb.
Right. Yeah. But, things like Winchester,
mm-hmm.
The Others, those suspenseful that isn't really...
I've never seen The Others, but I wanted to.
It's those kind of, like, what the heck is going on? I don't quite
mm-hmm.
understand. Get me. And the Paranormal Activity, watching... That freaked me out. I don't want to be in a haunted house, living in a haunted house.
I know several people that freaked out over the Blair Witch. At the end of this whole movie.
That was me.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
That was me. But again, that's what scares me, is not knowing what's in that dark back there. I'm more fearful of what human being is standing there who's going to harm me than what spirit
I think we all are on that one. But that's what gets me the most in that, is the fear of being in the middle of a wood. And I've got more stories I can go into, Brian and Jesse. But that's what freaks me out the most, is somebody human is out there watching me. Well, and at the end of this movie, I didn't say much during the whole movie. I just sat there going, when does this thing end? At the end, you see a boy in the corner of the basement. I think he's peeing in the basement, but he's standing there, and I'm going, oh, that was a great ending. That made loads of sense. And that was the last time I think they come out with several since then. That was the last time I watched it.
But here for me, that is, somebody has put him in that corner.
Well, and I think everybody had a different feeling to it.
Yeah.
And one time I'll tell this quick story.
Or he's the villain, and he's in the corner luring his friends in.
That's a twist. Well, I tell you,
See, I always go to the human component in that.
Well, I think that's a good way to do it. It makes you more subjective. And I mean, when you're looking at the subject, when I was I lived at one time next to a haunted house, and the haunted house was ran by the Southport softball team, and a gentleman that ran it at the time, really good guy. He always would come over and go, "Are you busy tonight?" And I go, "I don't know. What do you need?" He goes, "Can you come over and help out? Some of our actors didn't come in." I go, "I really don't do that kind of acting," and he'd have me, try to get me to dress up and go over there. And I said, well, and he always went, he says, when you want to walk through, I'll let you go through for free. His name was Tom, good guy. I said, no, I really don't like those kind of haunted houses. I said, they don't make a lot of sense to me, and I just don't. He says, well, would you do it once for me? I said, sure, as long as you make me one guarantee. I said, what? I said, I'll walk through yours, you come with me on mine. He looked at me, he says, no way in hell. He says, I'll just give you a t-shirt if you want one. I go, no, that's okay. I go,
and see, I'll go into investigate a haunted house, but I ain't walking through a real haunted house with humans again.
Exactly.
There's the human factor.
Yeah, I just I don't get that, and it just never has. But anyway,
so he's a shadow figure.
Yeah, and
he's not an alien.
No.
He's not a ghost in the sense that we normally think of ghosts, right?
No, and he there's a lot of now.
But he can't be the Grim Reaper either, because these people aren't.
He doesn't collect a soul.
Nobody's
He doesn't.
right?
Nobody's dying. He doesn't collect a soul. Sleep paralysis demon. Now this is something that a lot of people have gone to, and I think the problem is, I can tell you every time I pick up the spirit hotlines, hey, I got a demon in my house. Yeah. Do you know how many demons there must be out there? Yeah. Let me tell you what. It's not. There's so many people. I go. Well, first of all, relax.
Common as
it's
people
not.
think
Like
it
these
is.
TV shows.
It may be on TV a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, in movies, but it's not in real life.
No.
And I always tell them, you can relax. You don't have a demon. You might have a ghost, but you don't have a demon. A sleep paralysis demon, I would think, would torture the individual because they've got them in a perfect position. They're totally immobilized. They're totally, paralyzed. Why wouldn't they?
And,
like
and
a succubus or an incubus.
That phenomenon is complete. Is thoroughly documented, and it's not fitting or matching the parameters of our Hatman encounters.
No, and I mean, no, I don't. But it's funny watching how these people do it. Now, one thing, of course, the alien, we talked about that a little bit. Then we talked about a ghost. Well, he doesn't have any of the characteristics of a spirit.
No.
I mean, he doesn't. I mean, other than being a shadow figure, sometimes we say, well, shadow figures or ghosts don't have enough energy to manifest. Well, maybe not.
Or maybe there's two types.
Exactly. And now one thing that I
or
liked,
multiple types, because then we got the creepy crawlies on the ceilings.
Oh, yeah. And the creepers are starting to see more instance of that. Now,
But, of course, we're seeing more negativity in the world.
Exactly. And anytime that happens, anytime you get the first few new reports of some sort of entity or some sort of anomaly, then you always get suddenly two or three to add to that, and we have to fish those out.
Right.
But one thing I thought was pretty close was the multi-dimensional being. Okay, and then now this gets deep. This goes into, we're talking about the multiverse, and I'm not talking about where do you just so everybody knows, Spider-Man didn't make this up, neither did Flash. I mean, this is a theory.
We talked about this in the time slips episode.
Exactly, and this comes from Einstein, and theory involves both relativity and the thing is, if there's a multiverse, is he coming through? Okay, I get that, but does that mean we have a multiverse as all shadows? I mean, and what is he coming through for? I mean, this leaves more questions than it does answers, in my opinion. I don't know.
I just have like 3 different theories run through my brain in this.
Yeah, I mean, this thing, you could get a whole basket of theories with this when you look at it.
Yeah.
Is it somebody from the past or future that's watching us to see where to alter the incoming future? There's specials on that too.
A la Skynet, right?
Yeah.
Fringe.
Every time someone says...
Fringe. Okay.
Fringe.
We are not going down that little rabbit hole. Okay.
Oh, that's a deep rabbit hole.
We stop recording.
Yeah.
I love that show.
Well, and I tell you what, I keep thinking, I'm sorry, when everybody says the word multiverse, I think of...
Because he had a hat.
He had a hat.
Now, see, I never saw Fringe.
Okay. Well, when we
I
stop
know bits and
recording,
pieces.
we're going to go into
I know bits and pieces
now
of
I'm
it.
giddy, like, holy cow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, again, you could get a whole basket
That
full
just
of theories
takes
with
this
this guy.
multidimensional being up a notch, because when you're like, no, let's move on to the next one. But
Well, but there's so
That's
many things this could
interesting.
lead to.
Yeah.
I mean, could it be someone monitoring from the future? I mean, there's a lot here, folks.
Yeah.
Again, the Grim Reaper, we know he's a watcher at times. So definitely there's something. So you have to put that in a plausibility. Okay, if we're looking at factors here involved, we know that he looks like, yes, this and this, and he watches.
Right.
Because, there's no one that's got hurt from this guy.
No.
There's no episodes of, or no.
What are these 12 archetypes you've got
Well,
listed?
and this is something interesting I found, and the archetypes are a theory, okay?
Okay.
And they say there's 12 brand of archetypes within psychology, okay? You got the innocent, everyman, the hero, the outlaw, the explorer, creator, ruler, magician, lover, caregiver, jester, and sage. And when they take a look at this, believe it or not, of all things, this comes back as a sage. And yeah, and
what?
I mean, this game's. I'm thinking, now how did they get that out of there? There's a lot of times I'm confused, but I'm looking at this and going, do these people just do a lot of drugs? And we'll get into that later. But anyway, I'm thinking, how the hell do you get that one? I didn't see sage. I was thinking magician, or if I had to put him under something,
An explorer.
Explorer, yeah.
Yeah.
Explorer is probably one of the best ones I see. Yeah, I didn't see sage because I'm thinking, at what point did he give any kind of knowledge to anybody? And there isn't any.
Right.
None of those. So I don't know where they come up with it. But
Because Gandalf is more of a sage.
yes,
Right?
if you- yes,
Definitely.
yeah,
He would be
yeah.
a total sage archetype.
Yeah, he has
right?
all this knowledge and
So
history
I'm
in his
understanding
mind.
these are archetypes in art and literature, right?
In literature,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
yes.
okay.
And
Now I understand.
They're literature, but they also fold into psychology. Psychology refers to them a lot because of different personalities. When they start getting into multiple personality disorders and shifts,
Okay.
that they get into these. And so,
Okay.
and then of course you have the jinn theory, which is, and that goes back to different
Yeah.
religions. That shuts the Christian religion out. But it's the same.
Well,
Yeah, maybe not. I mean,
maybe not. Like as we discussed in
Yeah.
our Jinn episode, it's possible that Jinn is the origin for all of this.
and then that brings again that gets a deeper rabbit hole when you start going that
the thing
direction.
is, he doesn't. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, because
Yes.
I haven't read too many Hammett, but he doesn't interact like the Jinn that I know. He doesn't
Yes.
actually. He just sort of stands there and watches, right?
Yeah.
He
Yes.
doesn't. He doesn't
do anything. Yeah, he doesn't influence.
That's
he doesn't
not
affect.
what Jinn do, though. Jinn don't just watch.
No.
No, that's the problem.
They actively engage.
And at least in Hinduism and in the Muslim religion, they have identified types of jinn.
Yes, yes,
Now, I'm
and
not
they're-
saying there isn't other types, but I mean, you've got some sort of.
Well, and every type of jinn can corroborate and correlate to
Yeah.
some other spirit that we have in Western culture.
Exactly. So I mean,
And I don't
it's
see
kinda,
him fitting into any of
No,
those that I've
I see
researched.
that kind of like the difference between Greek and Roman mythology. You can look
exactly.
and see the parallel
Yeah,
universe there.
exactly.
Then
I
the
mean,
last one,
since we did the jinn episode,
Yeah.
I see everything in the realm of the origination of the jinn.
yes.
And I do. I mean, I can correlate everything
yeah.
now.
Well-
Into one, which to me then solidifies a underlying, all-encompassing base theory for everything.
Oh yeah. Well, and I mean,
know?
yeah, it could. I mean, that would
And
round it around.
I don't
and-
see Hatman fitting
No.
in.
No.
Well, and the next one, which I think is even further off, is the Mandela effect, and I'm thinking, where does that come in?
How did we all forget?
Yeah, I
Right?
didn't. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't see that at all.
I can't see that as applying. I'm sorry, I don't.
I don't either.
Now-
yeah.
Now that we've kind of discussed what he may or may not be, let's talk a little bit about there was a trend, and
Yeah, I
this
think
is still
everybody
going
has
on.
seen those memes.
Yeah.
I can't take Benadryl. I owe the Hatman money, and I don't want to see him again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, how do you owe Hatman money? I mean, I look at these and go, and this is our future. Uh-huh.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
But it's not just kids; it's adults.
Oh, no, yeah.
I was.
This whole Benadryl thing is...
Oh yeah. And
big.
when you take DPH, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of risk. When you're taking it like you're supposed to, it's not bad. Now, of course, in ambulance, we give higher doses to patients depending on what reaction and why what condition we're treating. But these kids are going over the deep end. And people have asked how this works. Well, they have several levels that everybody has to go up the different levels till they actually see Hatman. And first level is 100 milligram, 4 pills. Okay, that can be within almost close to a normal dose. Normal dose is usually 2 pills. that's over the counter. Level 2, 200 milligrams, 8 pills. Then it goes up, and during that time you can get mild hallucinations, maybe certainly increased thirst, because this is going to make you a lot more thirsty taking this drug. Level 3 is 300 milligrams, 12 pills. Now, it's 12 pills at once. Full-blown visual hallucinations, extreme thirst, and lost time. I don't take Benadryl, and I still have lost time. Anyway, I think it has something to do with age. But anyway,
get lost time on the normal dose.
Exactly. And,
I'm allergic.
Oh, it gets better. Level 4, you can't take it at all. Yeah, you'd see a lot of things immediately. Level 4, 400 milligrams, 16 pills at one time. Full-blown visual hallucinations, both and audio as well. Taste and also interactions with hallucinations. You're able to talk to them to a certain degree. And again, a lot of this study is based on one individual. And I'm not going to give his name because he did this and posted it to social media. Also,
there are a lot of podcasts that have delved deeply into this.
And I mean, it's creepy as hell. Extreme dehydration happens at this level, losses of functions of extremities, almost like your sleep paralysis. Then the final level is 500 to 700 milligrams, 28 pills. I think the record was 64, someone it took. This is complete lethargic state, high risk of death, violent hallucinations, audio, taste, and visual hallucinations altogether, interaction with the hallucinations, extreme dehydration, loss of some functions, again, of bodily functions, and also lost time altogether.
So I think bottom line, we are definitely not endorsing that you try this at home.
I want everybody to understand that, we're imploring you, please do not do this. We did not give you that information to allow you to go do that.
We gave you this information to scare you into not.
I think anytime, and this is not, people are going, oh my God. No, it's not necessarily just our generation. If you go back, this has been done before.
Yep.
Were they trying to use this as like an LSD?
A D trip, that's exactly what they're doing. Now, before LSD, I'll blow your mind and show my age, was Carlos Quintana. You got your peyote, and he would use the Indian version of using peyote, and he would have and there's a 3-volume set. I have it to his journey, his celestial out of body journeys he did with peyote.
And now we've got people doing
LSD
ayahuasca.
Probably would have been safer.
So would peyote, but Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, this is not something to mess around with or just try with a group of friends.
It's a lot more dangerous.
This is dangerous.
Yeah. And I remember, I can't remember what movie it is. There's a movie out where it's been out for a long time. It's about a bunch of young doctors going through medical school, and they take this ability to flatliners, that's it, where they go in and defibrillate each other, and they die for a short period of time and come back. I'm thinking, what in the hell are you thinking? 360 joules ran through you, and then not only the fact it can damage your heart, but you might
not come back.
Yeah, you might not. There's
Sam
always
Dean
that.
Did it though?
Who did?
Remember that episode?
How many times?
Oh, Paranormal. Yeah, I didn't see that episode. Did we see that episode? I don't think
Supernatural.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen that one.
There's a couple of times where
oh God,
Dean actually kills himself.
Yeah.
In order to get into the spirit realm to help the spirit in trouble.
Well, sure.
Sam is right.
And
there
now we're going back. The whole spirit realm. If we get right down to the point, could be a multi-dimensional thing. I don't want to get back into that again,
exactly.
But it could be.
That's where
that's where a lot of people feel we're at in this problem. And after you do this a couple of times, just so you understand how dangerous this is, you can actually get HPPD, which is hallucinogen persisting perception disorder. In other words, you remain out there in la la land where you can't tell what's real and what's not. I hate to break it down to that, but it's true. Yes, this is a condition. You'll suffer hallucinogenic episodes throughout your life. Your body will never quite regulate. You'll have PTSD. Aerial conditioning. Now, what this is really strange. I'd never heard of this until I got researching this. Aerial conditioning is where you, in a dream, you feel like you're falling out of an aircraft or falling off a cliff. It tends to give you that jolt every so often where you feel like you're up high and you want to hold on to something. You may be walking across the living room floor, but you're holding on to furniture because it feels like you're on an I-beam of a 79-story building.
That feeling where you jolt awake when you're falling asleep, but you're already awake.
Exactly.
When you're awake.
Aerial conditioning. So
fine.
Yeah, and
I don't like it when I'm falling asleep.
No, and the extreme anxiety that can't be treated with medication. It's a lot of permanent damage. So now, on a different end of this thing, and I mean, there's a lot here, but stories of the Hat Man, when I started looking at all these different accounts, okay, there's a couple of them that are really interesting because they're not, we have interaction with the Hat Man, but it's not a negative. One instance was a young girl was lost, okay, and I'm not going to go into great details because I don't know, again, all these stories are stories that we've researched on different accounts, so I don't always know if they're 100% truthful. I'm giving you as they have stated it to us. But a young girl was lost. She was lost in the woods, and as she slept, Hat Man appeared to her, and he said, grab my hand, and I will take you back to your people. And within a few minutes, they had her back, and she was in a field, and she came walking out of the field to some hikers that met her and said, oh, my God, are you okay? The funny thing was she managed to traverse 70 miles from where she was lost in under a day. And all she kept saying is she kept going to sleep under these trees, and when she'd wake up, the Hat Man would take her a little further. You've heard of that one?
No, but I have not heard of that one, actually, but that just triggered a memory. We were talking before we were recording about upcoming episodes we were thinking of, and I said I had an idea, but I couldn't remember it right off. It's the third man syndrome.
Oh, theory? Yeah.
The third man syndrome, where you're not really alone in extreme times of danger.
Yes,
like with Shackleton.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it Shackleton?
No, it wasn't Shackleton. It was
Petty.
Who is it?
Tom Petty, the race car driver.
No, okay, that's a good one, but that isn't the one. We're going after this explorer. He discovered, is he the one that discovered this? No, Shackleton was that one.
No, it's the one.
Shackleton's Scottish. I know a lot about him. The rest of them I don't. It'll come to me more than likely right after we stop recording.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, he's a well-known explorer. He's part of the Explorers Club. I can think of everything but his damn name. But anyway, but funny thing was, one of the guys that I was telling one of our listeners that we're getting ready to do this episode. And by the way, you're very famous because I said something about producer. He said, oh, you mean Jennifer?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah, so I mean, they know you and Heather real well. And of course, they know all three of us from these episodes. So anyway, I told him we were doing this. He says, you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of the 411 disappearances.
Oh, yeah.
And I hadn't thought about that because I read those. I mean, we're not into cryptozoology either, but I read those. And, I'm friends with Russ from, the Bigfoot Expedition. And I mean, we read those. I talk to a lot of people, and doing cryptozoology. But that does, because in there, a lot of the people that were lost that were actually found as a result of that expanded great distances in little no time, impossible amounts of time. It's just, it's hard to understand. So anyway.
No. Is it Franklin?
No, it's not Franklin. I'll know it when you get there. I'm thinking Perry is who I'm thinking. And but I don't think it's Perry either. I know the name.
We'll find it.
Yeah, we'll find it. We'll find it for you. But anyway, the other story that came to this is that, whenever this one particular orphanage would adopt children, the Hat Man would come to comfort them after they moved into their new house. And there was several children. Yeah, I know, that's kind of creepy, isn't it? Yeah. The word comforting, I'd like someone to define that in reference to this story. I can't see anything comforting about this son of a gun, I'll tell you that. And I mean, but anyway, so there's some people, either the stories are false and they're trying to sculpt this into something positive, and I look at this thing and I say, it's kind of funny. We've been watching this show called Evil. And by the way, we don't get paid for any endorsements, so, we're not endorsing anything, but it goes off on some crazy tangents, and I'm thinking this may be a crazy tangent. But, the key thing is to take away at the end of this thing is we don't know why he appears. There's still not enough data in to be able to make this reference. And he doesn't just appear to children. He appears to everybody, but it's only select individuals. There's no correlation, no common denominator we can find that says, hey, this is the reason why. So if you have had an experience with Hat Man, go to our Facebook page and post that. Let us know or send us a message through the website. Again, the website's www.spiritindiana.com. And, let us know. You'll find links there to their Facebook and their Instagram. Let us know if you've had some sort of interaction or someone that's had that interaction. So, well, for this episode, that's about what we got. And unfortunately, we got more questions than we've got answers this time,
Yep,
it
as
is
usual.
what it is. So, well, folks, at this time, it is now time for the ghost story of the day with Jennifer Verne.
Today's ghost story of the day is from A Ghost a Day by Maureen Wood and Ron Kolick. Jacob Funeral Home, Kokomo, Indiana. In 2000, a local man purchased the old Jacob Funeral Home. It was the only black-owned and operated funeral home in central Indiana. Dating back to the early 1900s, it had a strange past, and what the new owner found when he began remodeling was even stranger. In the damp basement behind some rubble was a small storeroom. In it were moldy stacks of cardboard boxes labeled personal belongings. The rotting cartons contained the personal items of the deceased who were supposed to be buried with them, but somehow got misplaced. They contained a variety of items from wedding bands to children's stuffed toys, and always a photograph of the person who died. As the remodeling progressed, a series of strange events afflicted the building. Lights and water faucets would turn on and off by themselves. Whispers could be heard echoing in the halls, and the sound of a high-pitched drilling noise emanated from the basement, where the boxes had been found. But the creepiest experience of all was the black shadows lurking in the corners, darting back and forth through the building. A minister was called in for a blessing, but things only deteriorated. Psychics refused to enter the building, and heavy and sullen moods began to affect its inhabitants. Finally, the owner decided to sell the items found in the basement on eBay, with hopes that the ghosts go with them. That might be fine for him, but what about the purchaser?
Thanks for listening to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd. All rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.